Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Richard Herskowitz, the artistic director of the Ashland Independent Film Festival, and I'm thrilled to have here the director of the film you just saw, Beth B. Hi, Beth.
Hey there.
And of course, the star and subject of the film, Lydia Lunch. Welcome, Lydia.
Thank you for the invitation.
I'm thrilled to meet you after all these years. Beth and I go back a long way, but Lydia, I just was so blown away by this film, and I'd been a fan of your music, but I learned so much more about you from this. I'd just like to start to ask, your collaboration on this, and it strikes me that Beth was the absolute perfect person to make this film. Could you talk about that, Lydia?
Only person. Absolutely. People have asked, look, I've been in a lot of other documentaries, and people always ask me, I'm like, I'm still working here. Can you wait a bit? And I also knew that Beth got me, and that's an important thing. I mean, it's hard to condense almost 43 years of schizophrenic creativity into, I don't know how many minutes this film is.
Yeah.
I've already told Beth before we finish filming, what about part two?
We're going to get there, Lydia. We're going to get there. Patience. Patience. Yeah, it was interesting for me also because I've known Lydia since she was 19 years old and I was 23, New York City, crazy, insane times in the downtown scene. And after I did the film Call Her Applebrug about my mother, Ida Applebrug, it was like, okay, it kind of was a no-brainer. I was like, I really wanted to kind of go back and look at that period of time in New York City, but also I felt like it was critically important for people to understand the history of what Lydia was talking about today, and that there is, a huge journey that was taken to get to where many women are today, able to open their mouths, talk about, not just women, men as well, but to be able to talk about the things that Lydia has been screaming about for 35, 40 years,
Decades.
But you too, Beth, and it just strikes me that both of you in your careers have been making films about the structures of domination and power and patriarchal authority and imprisonment. And actually, I was kind of struck by the fact that, your films, Beth, like that starred Lydia, actually, they're not so much in this film. Vortex and Black Box and The Offenders. That's kind of interesting. But again, you share those concerns, and they come out of the same context.
Yeah, I didn't want the film to be about me. And my films, that's not really the focus. Even though Lydia has been in some films, we had a number of collaborations. I really wanted it to be truly focused on her, to not distract in a way.
Yes.
Well, so that retrospective is coming. And again, I mean,
This is true.
what I love about the early B films is they are perversely political, ahead of their time. And also, I really like the cinematography because they, especially The Offenders, almost looks like a play in some parts. And I'm quite proud to be part of that because it was instigated after I had a residency at Max's Kansas City with Teenage Jesus and asked Beth if she'd like to show films. And instead of just showing films for every Monday in a month, she decided to make a new film every week. And again, I mean, it's kind of one reason Beth and I get along so well is I was going to say ravenous, and I guess that's the word. I mean, we create at a rabid pace. We like to do things, get them done. And again, I mean, there were a lot of things that were left out of the documentary because there's only so much time, but how much Beth was able to cram in was amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think it's that consummate professionalism. I mean, it is such a daunting, I can't even imagine taking on all the archival footage you had to dig up and weave together with the performance footage and the interview footage. But Beth, from the beginning, I mean, I think that was so striking about your work, that is the polish and the authority of the filmmaking. It was striking to see this. In many ways, you would follow all the rules of commercial filmmaking, and you had mastered those, but the content was so subversive. And at the same time now, that really that incredible ability to weave all these different disparate sources around, my hat's off to you.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt, because thank you for the word subversive. I prefer confrontational, but only the fact that in so many ways, I was always dealing with a reality people didn't want to admit was real. Mm-hmm. And especially, you know, having my first spoken word piece being Daddy Dearest, which people are just, you know, in the last 5 years talking about both incest and sexual harassment and the imbalance of sexual power. And then also my political speeches, which started under Ronald Reagan, and people would just, oh, you exaggerate. How can you exaggerate what war is? And I mean, why the title of the film is The War Is Never Over is I can just take blocks of those speeches. And even when I was just actually going on instinct about politics, and hello, and here we are still again. Yeah. So I never thought that what I was doing was shocking, subversive. I thought I was a journalist of the hysteria of our times. Yeah. Just saying.
Yeah. Well said, Lydia. Well said, Lydia. Well said. Yeah, because it really was. A lot of people ask about like the late 70s, 80s, you know, like, and did we know what we were doing and why were we doing it? And it was almost like it wasn't a choice. Mm-hmm. We were so enraged and insane by what was around us and the lack thereof, that in a way it was, in a sense, a primal scream from all of us at that time. Mm-hmm. And I think something that you were talking about, Richard, which I do feel is very reflective in my work, is this concept of the hybrid form, that my films, and even Lydia Lunch, this movie, I do follow tropes of traditional filmmaking. Okay, but I really weave together, and have always done this, weaving together experimental, documentary, narrative. I never went to film school. It was just instinct. And it was weaving those together where I get the most joy from, to be able to have it tell, in a sense, to be a journey, but it does not necessarily have to be a linear journey. And to me, that's, often quite boring. Yeah. So with the film of Lydia's, we move in and out of time. It's more thematically based, which is a reflection of my work and Lydia's work. We both work thematically, and many of the themes overlap throughout the years.
Yeah, I consider myself a conceptualist.
Conceptual.
All of my ideas, whether musical, spoken word, even photography, they all begin with the concept. And it's never, and I've worked with so many incredible collaborators in film, in music, in all kinds of art, but I never think about who do I want to work with. It's always what the project dictates, who is the most appropriate for that. And so hence it brings me up to this unholy matrimony between Beth B and myself, that again, she was the only person insane enough to take this on.
Yeah.
And I thank her.
And how did you, where was all this stuff stored? I mean, I know you shot the interviews, a lot of this you recorded yourself, but all those amazing spoken word pieces over the years, how did you track those down?
It was really, Lydia, of course, helped, tons of research by myself, and I called together an extraordinary, library of her work, spoken word pieces. Some were lost, some we discovered, but it really was going through them. And then again, it's in the editing. A documentary film takes place in the editing. That's where it all comes together. And so it was trying to figure out how to, in a sense, mirror what was being said in the interviews, what was most important that I felt needed to be brought about, and then figuring out what archival footage could help reflect or sometimes contradict. And that's what I love about, Lydia's, some of it's so funny, it's like, I'm like laughing as I'm watching it. It's the humor. And a lot of people early on never got that about Lydia. They were just scared of her.
I'm laughing all the time. It's the reason I still go on. Part of the reason, as considering myself the liver of America and taking on these horrible subjects, which really, when it boils down, in my own private utopia, whether I was living in a cardboard box under a bridge, a future or past possibility, or living in what I consider, you know, a very nice, safe space right now, is that these subjects that I had to take on, in a sense, it doesn't even really impact my personal life because I'm so far off the grid. And one part of me is just like, so why do I fucking care about this shit? Mm-hmm. But in another side, I have to care because I feel it's not only in the here and now, but all of this crap that the individual, that the weirdos, that the intellectuals, that the others, which we all are inundated by bullshit, has been going on for centuries. Mm-hmm. So somebody has to be, and I think that's what gave me the power to speak out in the first place is, look, any of these issues, whether they're interpersonal, sexual, or political, they're not really my problems. Mm-hmm. My problems are much smaller than so many others, than the global situation, than the female condition in this reality, that the other outsider, LGBT, whatever, anything that is not a straight, white, middle-aged, or older Republican, mm-hmm. that this has gone on and on forever. We can go back to the cave. Somebody had to be the voice screaming into the void. And for some reason, that was me.
Well,
and it's
I hope, and I'm actually certain, I mean, that this film's gonna help re-amplify this voice. I mean, I can't wait to see Retrovirus. I hope you guys are gonna be going on the road again.
Right.
Especially, I mean, plus the name of the band is going to be so apropos on the other side of this pandemic. So,
well, also what we're hoping, the plan, now that Kino Lorber mm-hmm. is distributing Lydia Lunch, The War's Never Over, as well as they've acquired my entire film library, is that we're going to be doing a retrospective. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so that we can actually. Yes, and exactly, but that's exactly it, that we can bring Lydia, Retrovirus, etc., to come visit you, Richard.
Yes, yes.
Right? We've been talking about this.
Yes. Well, you know,
just to clarify what Retrovirus is. I mean, I have such an immense musical body of work, and straightening out my publishing recently, I've written over 380 songs. Like, I know I have 8 arms. I didn't know I had 3 mouths. Mm-hmm. When were all these songs written? But if you divide it, it's really only about 10 a year, I guess. It's not that many. But Retrovirus is a retrospective that tries to cover the majority of the variants in my music. But also what's important to me right now is I do a podcast, Lydia and Spin, goes out every Friday too. The same way, in a sense, that the documentary exposes a lot of the people I've worked with to other people. The podcast I'm doing, I consider it an audio museum, and it's exposing people that, you know, these people might not have heard of them. They might have fans of this. And we've done over 90 episodes so far. And that's important, especially in times of COVID, for me to continue doing it. It's just one of the projects, mm-hmm. you know, I've been just as creative in COVID as not. I was lucky because my last show was the last show in New York, and I didn't have touring planned after March 13th last year. I had other things I was working on, mm-hmm. like the podcast, and also I'm doing a documentary on artist depression, anxiety, and rage, uh-huh. Which I don't suffer from any of these things. I'd gladly send you the trailer.
Please.
But all of my wonderful friends do. So I become like the in-house therapist. And then next week, we're actually interviewing some therapists. I'd love to send you the trailer.
Yeah.
I think that all of my work has been a documentary. I consider myself a journalist, as I said, of the hysteria of our times.
Okay. Well, originally, you know, this was supposed to show last year in our physical festival before we had to call it off. And Beth was also going to show some of her short films. So now we can do this even bigger with your upcoming film.
It's fantastic.
We'll just keep going. We just keep going.
It would be great to revisit and to do it together, because we did some of that in Europe with Lydia Lunch, The War's Never Over, before COVID came in. We had these phenomenal screenings, and then Lydia would perform live, and it just gave the audience, it kind of, there was a visceral reaction to the film, and then the embodiment live of Lydia on stage. Nothing like it. I've never seen anything like it.
I always say stunning. It's better if they can smell it. It may sound harsh, but it does smell sweet.
Speaking of smell, I hope you bring your bassist as well.
The best smelling man in rock.
Yeah.
I was just sniffing at him last night. He still smells good.
Tim Dahl. Yep.
My partner in my podcast.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when we do the podcast, it's by Zoom now, so I can't get a good sniff of him. I have to like seduce him over occasionally, just get a like little whiff, but he's there, smelling good.
Lydia, Beth, thank you so much for joining us and for bringing us this fantastic film.
Thank you for the
having
invitation, and be in touch with you more soon, and good luck with the rest of the festival.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you for showing the movie. Enjoy it.